warm welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. Over the past 7 years, we've understood what matters most to you, the entrepreneur. And in year 8, we're taking head-on 2 of your most pressing concerns, that of funding and mentoring. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. On the show tonight, an exclusive freewheeling conversation with the founder chairman of the Wadhwani Foundation, Romesh Wadhwani. In this interview, Chief Editor IP's Times Influence Mihir Bhatt spoke to him about the policies and regulations surrounding India's small businesses and asked him his views as far as government regulation is concerned for MSMEs and SMEs. Take a listen to part 1 of this interview.
Welcome to this exclusive interview with Dr. Romesh Wadhwani, who is here with us in India. He's one of the most exciting names in Silicon Valley. Sir, thank you so much for joining us, and a very warm welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow Season 8. Our theme for this season is small to scalable. And I think your journey actually truly depicts the journey from small to scalable, starting from IIT Mumbai and going all the way to Silicon Valley. So first of all, your initial thoughts about this theme for Leaders of Tomorrow.
I think it's a very exciting theme. I think it's great to showcase entrepreneurs who have very good ideas, very good business models, plans for how they're going to grow their companies, and by putting them in front of an audience of entrepreneurs and of judges who have done this before is a great way for them to learn, great way for them to compete, great way for them to build better companies, more successful companies.
Mm-hmm. In fact, that's what we do, and I think somewhere that's at the cornerstone of our initiative Winning Pitch, where we are trying to solve, along with other issues, we are also trying to solve the issue of funding, because we believe in the current scenario, especially in India, that is one of the biggest challenges that an upcoming business or SMEs are facing. Your take on that?
I think entrepreneurs in India face, particularly if they are non-technology entrepreneurs, they face a lot of challenges. It starts with just the support of their community, their family, their friends to want to be entrepreneurs, because obviously being an entrepreneur involves a certain degree of risk, and many Indians are not yet comfortable with the idea of taking risks. The second is having enough knowledge about how to go about starting a company, getting the talent, developing your product idea, taking it to market, building the whole operation of the company, and raising capital. So I think the experiences of all these different entrepreneurs that comes through in the Winning Pitch is going to benefit the whole entrepreneurial community. I think at one end it has the potential to inspire college students and other young people in India about the potential and opportunities in entrepreneurship without worrying as much about fear and risk, and more about opportunity and success. It then takes them on the journey of learning the how-to from their peers and from the judges, and hopefully it makes them better prepared to be very successful growth entrepreneurs.
Right. Romesh, in fact, when it comes to India, now obviously the SMEs and MSMEs, the whole ecosystem, it's a very important component of the overall economy. They contribute almost 29% to economy. But somewhere, I think in terms of focus and in terms of solution-driven approach from the government side or from the governance side, I think there are missing links in the overall approach about MSMEs and SMEs and the way we empower them, as a society, as an economy. How can this be fixed, or what are your thoughts? Because, I know that you keep meeting the Prime Minister himself, and he has been closely following the progress of SMEs and MSMEs in India. So, what has figured and featured in your conversation with him?
I think most of the policies that have been established over the last many years were not designed to support the growth of MSMEs. They were either designed to achieve certain policy objectives relative to large enterprise in India, or to take a one-size-fits-all approach to all MSMEs. Now, all MSMEs are not the same. So India has over 60 million businesses that you would call MSMEs, but almost all 60 million of them are truly micro enterprises with an average of 1 to 2 employees each. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got big medium companies that may have 500 to 2,000 employees each, and somewhere in the middle are a whole bunch of small and medium companies or businesses that have between 50 and 250 employees. Now, if you take the growth opportunity, the largest growth opportunity in terms of job creation and economic impact in supporting the Prime Minister's objective of growing the economy from 3 trillion to 5 trillion, will really come from this center segment, the companies that are between 50 and 250 employees. So they need a particular set of policies to facilitate their growth. For example, today if they want to borrow money from a bank, the quantities, the dollar amounts or the rupee amounts available to them are very small. They have to be collateralized with real estate or physical equipment, when we live in a time when most businesses have little need of real estate or heavy equipment. Instead, they have intellectual property. Instead, they have receivables. So the banking system here needs to wake up and needs to be supported by the government through policy or otherwise to make it possible to give loans to these middle of the MSME sector in a way that is friendly to them. There is much more opportunity for providing venture capital to these businesses, because when you think about it, today's venture capital, 90% of it goes only to technology companies. What about all the other manufacturers that the country should be encouraging? People who are in distribution, people who manufacture pumps, people who are in hospitality, people who are in other sectors of the economy. They don't have access to venture capital, so there are policy approaches by which additional venture capital could be provided to the non-tech sector, particularly to companies in this 50 to 250 employee range. There are other policies that could be applied to companies that are sort of in the 10 to 50 employee range. And similarly, there are policies that could be put in place to make it easier for small businesses to go to an incubator and get access to mentoring help, get access to peer level support from other entrepreneurs. But this needs to be organized, and the policy needs to work hand in hand with the execution of the policy.
Right. In fact, what we also observe is, there are various initiatives even from government and regulators which are taking place. But I think somewhere they are happening in pockets. So you have a separate mechanism to list startups, you have a separate mechanism to list SMEs, and then you have the main exchanges where, all the companies are listed. That's one part of it. Second is government obviously initiated to sort of create a ease of funding kind of initiative for SMEs, MSMEs and startups. That's there. But again, not many people have benefited. The whole Mudra scheme also was started with this thought process. It has not really resulted or converted in that kind of success which ideally it should have with the kind of fund and the kind of government backing that it had. So, how do we synergize all these efforts which are happening in pockets as a country?
That's a great point. There are lots of different projects and schemes, but the problem is they start with a policy made at the 40,000 foot level, and not as much attention is paid to how that policy will be executed and how to bring related policies and related sources of funding together to take a holistic view of what the mid-sized business entrepreneur actually needs. If you take an example of incubators, clearly there's money available to start up incubators, but a lot of the money is actually going into just setting up physical facilities. No one is paying attention to the fact that to make an incubator really successful, it isn't the land, it isn't the buildings. It's the leadership of the incubator. It needs to be very entrepreneur friendly. It's the project management support that needs to be provided by the incubator to the 50 or 100 entrepreneurs who will have a one-year journey through that incubator. It's about providing them with a mentor platform so they get access to all the mentoring and support that they need. It's connecting them to customers, could be government customers or private sector customers. It's connecting them to sources of capital, could be high net worth individuals, could be banks, could be venture capital, funds. That holistic view of how you put the entrepreneur at the center and do a 360-degree sort of engagement with the entrepreneur, providing them all the different resources they need through one mechanism, that's what's missing. I just used the incubator as an example, but the same thing applies to small and medium businesses that don't necessarily go through an incubator.
Right.
So as an example, the work that our foundation does, we have two separate initiatives in this area. One is called Wadhwani Entrepreneur, that focuses on helping startup entrepreneurs. In fact, all the way before they become entrepreneurs, we have a college entrepreneurship program at scale. And then once they become entrepreneurs, we have a support program for entrepreneurs. In each case, we are building sort of a 360-degree engagement model for how you engage with students to get them excited about becoming entrepreneurs. And then once they do become entrepreneurs, a 360-degree engagement model for how to take them on a journey from an idea to a product, to a business, to growth, to a very successful business. Similarly, on the small business side, we have a foundation initiative called Wadhwani Advantage.
Right.
The mission of Wadhwani Advantage is to help small businesses and medium businesses accelerate their growth rate. So if they were previously growing at 0, get them to 10%. If they were growing at 10%, get them to 30% growth. If they were declining 10% a year, get them to a plus 10% a year. But to do that, again, we have to put that small business owner or entrepreneur at the center and look around that center and figure out what kinds of support programs are really needed, and then have a policy or have an action program which addresses each dimension of that small businessman's needs. So I think fundamentally what's missing is, to some degree, new policies are needed. To some degree, existing policies need to be enforced, because there are a number of policies that would be extremely beneficial. They're just not being enforced to the full degree necessary. But beyond all that, we have to integrate these policies and the delivery mechanisms for these policies to actually produce the outcome that we're all looking for, which is more economic growth, more jobs.
Time to slip into a short break on that note. Much more when we come back on this exclusive conversation with the founder chairman of Wadhwani Foundation. Do stay tuned. Back in just a moment.
We learned that the key to scaling in India, with all the challenges of scaling anyone has in India or frankly any other country, you need great program management.
Lately also what we have observed is, especially in India, where a separate startup ecosystem has evolved and quite successfully. Suddenly they are on fast track when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to receiving funding, and obviously that whole debate about their valuation and all of that. So that's a very exciting space. On the other hand, you have brick and mortar small and medium businesses where there is still a lot of stress. I think it's still very unorganized to a great extent, and they have their own issues. Now, how do we balance between these two? Because, we cannot choose one over the other, because for a country like India, which has a massive requirement of jobs, both are needed and both are actually effectively engines of an economy.
I think it all comes down to what is the role of government, to help the people who can help themselves or to help the people who need the help. For the most part, technology-focused companies that have a well-defined business plan and a good entrepreneur, whether proven or not, just the right characteristics or qualities you look for in an entrepreneur, someone like that is going to get support from Sequoia Capital or a whole variety of other venture capital firms that exist in India. They will provide the mentors, they will provide the support, they will provide the knowledge and the experience. While government may be able to help, I would say the role of government in helping that kind of entrepreneur and that kind of techno-centric business is minimal.
Yeah.
But that represents 1%, 2%, 5% of the small businesses India needs to support. So to me, that's the outlier. That's not the center of the universe where it comes to the SMB sector. The need is really for all the other companies. Could be tech-enabled businesses, could be non-tech businesses, could be businesses that are not tech today, may become tech 5 years from now. These are the ones who have no venture capitalists interested in them. They have limited or no sources of debt financing. Very tough for them to recruit talent. Very tough for them to go find customers. Very tough for them to go find mentors. So if the government is going to help, why not help where the biggest numbers are and where the biggest need is? And that's pretty obvious. It's the 95% or 97% of small and medium businesses that are not technology-centric businesses.
Right. You are in fact very closely involved and you are taking a lot of initiatives to support actually both the sides, and I know how excited you always are about technology. So, what is your vision in terms of supporting or encouraging these entrepreneurs, because ultimately that's what matters for India when it comes to keeping that $5 trillion goal in mind. If these people don't perform, and on its own economy will take much longer to reach that $5 trillion benchmark than what it may take otherwise.
Right. So this kind of leads to the transformation of our own foundation, right? I mean, I talk about transformation of other companies. I have transformed my own companies over the years, but a couple of years ago, I reached the conclusion that our own foundation needed to transform to achieve scale. Our foundation has been around in India for over 18 years. We've established a very successful program called the National Entrepreneurship Network, which has helped tens of thousands of college students become entrepreneurs. But that was yesterday. Now, if you look ahead and you set yourself a couple of aspirational goals, which are incredibly difficult goals, and the first goal might be that you want to help 10 million people, young adults, get jobs. You want to help 100,000 small businesses or entrepreneurs grow their businesses to help create these jobs. You want to have skilling programs to skill people to fill these jobs. And now you connect the dots, and all of a sudden achieving this kind of scale is awesomely hard and really intimidating, even for someone like me. So 2 years ago, when I thought that we had done a lot of work in 18 years, but now it was time to scale up by a factor of 100, these challenges came to the table. So I worked with our team. We actually strengthened our own team. We brought in a whole new additional set of leaders to help achieve this kind of scale. We set up these 3 very large-scale initiatives: Wadhwani Entrepreneur to help startup entrepreneurs, Wadhwani Advantage to help small businesses, and Wadhwani Opportunity to help skill tens of millions of young adults in high schools and in vocational training institutes and ITIs. But the execution of these programs is really massively complicated. So I'll give you an example. In the Advantage program, which is our newest program, we only launched this program 1 year ago. In 2019, we did a pilot program with 100 small businesses. So we went from 0 to 100. We produced 600 jobs, obviously a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of 10 million. But we learned 4 things. We learned that the key to scaling in India, with all the challenges of scaling anyone has in India or frankly any other country, you need great program management. So we're building out a core competence in program management. The second is that you need a great technology platform. You cannot run at the scale of 100,000 companies with human intervention for every single thing you do. So increasingly, we are taking all the knowledge we are gaining in helping the small businessmen or in helping startup entrepreneurs, creating a huge amount of knowledge and beginning to use artificial intelligence to apply this knowledge to make it available to an increasingly larger and larger number of small businessmen and entrepreneurs. The third thing that you need are really good partnerships, because no one can do this alone. In the end, we are just one foundation. We may have large aspirations, but the execution requires us to work very closely with the central government, with state governments, with different cities that we are in. And the fourth is that we've had to adapt our geographic execution model we were previously thinking about it as state by state, with the state at the center. We are now thinking about it city by city for the top 100 cities, with the state being representative of the cities that we are focused on. Now, when we say we're going to focus on 100 cities, it does not mean we'll be just within the little metropolitan boundary. It's the entire hinterland or the entire region around the city. But the reason is because that's where the new jobs are largely going to be. That's where a lot of the migration is going to be happening and is happening from rural to urban. And that's where we can bring all the resources with maximum impact. Now, that does not mean that we don't want to support the rural side of the Indian economy, because it is so large in terms of number of people, even though it's only about 15% of the GDP. But you can only do one thing at a time. So for the next 3 years, our focus is more on the urban side than the rural side. But during the same 3 years, we intend to incubate new ideas for helping businesses in rural areas think about how to achieve scale. So on the one side, rapid rollout of a scale program in a large number of cities. On the other side, incubation of ideas for how we can help the rural sector as well.
That's all for part 1. In part 2 of this exclusive conversation, Mihir has spoken to Romesh Wadhwani about his views on what it's going to take for that $5 trillion economic target that's been set by the government, and for the economy to be able to achieve that, and what small businesses need to do towards that target. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
I have a simple belief that a company that does not keep innovating is ultimately dead, even if they don't know that they're going to be dead sometime in the future. Because you can never anticipate when you're going to be disrupted, right? Everyone's being disrupted.